Forgotten ancient empires are a classy favorites among many people, and here are some that you might forgot about. Although the Bronze Age in Korea is noted around 900-800 BC Korea, the transition might even go even further. It is believed that by the 4th century BC, iron culture was developing in Korea by northern influence via today's Russian maritime province. Gojoseon Empire is part of the ancient Korea and is noted in Korean texts not so much on Western knowledge, as Gojoseon or Joseon was the first Korean kingdom located in the north of the peninsula and Manchuria. Later, alongside the state of Jin in the south of the peninsula, the historical Gojoseon kingdom was first mentioned in the Chinese record in a text called Guanzi. By about the 4th century BC, Gojoseon had developed to the point where its existence was well known in China, and around this time it moved the capital to Pyongyang. The founding legend of Gojoseon, which is recorded in Samgukyosa, dated in 1281, reveals that other medieval Korean books stating that the birth of Korea was established in 2333 BC and is said to descended from heaven. In the 12th century BC, Gija, a prince from the Shang dynasty of China, purposely founded Gija Joseon in pre-modern Korea, as Gija represented the authenticating presence of Chinese civilization, and until the 12th century, Koreans commonly believed that Dangun bestowed upon Korea its people and basic culture, while Gija gave Korea its high culture and presumably standing as a legitimate civilization. For 400 years, until as recently as the 18th century, the Ajuran Sultanate ruled a giant empire across the Horn of Africa, and it was the water that gave them this power. The origins of the Ajuran Sultanate are somewhat obscure, as they were an oral culture, and most of what is known about them is only through the traditions of those who is in the end overthrew them. So all that follows is often interference and maybe inaccurate, like every other civilization out there. Every old stone structure in Somalia is ascribed to the Ajurans, and every other claim of the clans to have been the ones to have destroyed them. Broadly speaking of them, a region of modern Somalia known as the Ogaden was ruled by the Garan kingdoms, and the slaves of the Sultanates constructed a great limestone wells producing gathering points for the nomadic people. By bringing these people to the new towns, the Imam brought them under his rule. Castles and barracks in those towns helped to keep those people in line, stone castles impregnable to attack from any rebellious locals. The slaves constructed canals, irrigation, and arid lands, and creating farmlands again under the Imam's rule. Eventually in the 1580s, the Ajurans allied with the Ottoman Empire and wound up warring with the Portuguese for control of the Indian Ocean. Over the next 200 years, the conflict would of course continue, with cities trading hands throughout the conflict. As it is, due to mistranslations, those who said what and what who said who, it is still unclear what the cause of the Ajuran Empire was or is. Some say it was the Imam's bred resentment or the fall of the client states, but whatever it was, there's still little to know about the once powerful confederations in African history. The Songhai Empire is best known for the works of the Sunni Ali and Muhammad-I Askia. Both kings expanded the empire greatly and are responsible for the region's economic prosperity and control of the trade networks through the Sahara. The Songhai Empire grew very wealthy thanks to its control of trading posts alongside the trans-Saharan trade route, including Guinea and Timbuktu. This trade route connected to North Africa to south and west, and across these routes, a variety of goods, including foodstuffs, clothes, and cowrie shells, and cola nuts flowed. The Moroccan army, however, decisively defeated the Songhai army in the Battle of Tondibi on March 13, 1591. Then they captured the cities of Timbuktu and Gao, and effectively ending the Songhai Empire. However, the Songhai Empire still exists in fragments. See, once something lives, it never really dies, does it? The Songhai Empire of the 15th and 16th century would include the present-day nations that we see today, including the following: Guinea, Senegal, Benin, Niger, and Ivory Coast, and there's others, but I can't pronounce them, so not trying to insult anyone. It was the largest African empire of this time, so today this region is also known as West Africa. The Maurya Empire is one of many that may or may not ring a bell, but it's a fascinating one for sure. In the year 230 BC, 1/3 of the human beings on this planet seemed to dedicate their allegiance to only one single man. Some say that he was a demon, some say he was a saint, or both, but he was Ahsoka Maurya, or Ahsoka the Great. Not Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, that's a different one. While Rome was still in its infancy, he ruled more than any man on earth could claim. Although those who residing in the west would be unfamiliar, those who lived in the regions he ruled to be familiar. After all, the empire he reigned is where we know now as India. It was Ashoka, however, that would push the empire to the greatest extent. The entire peninsula was under his way, save for the Tamil kingdoms of the south, who managed to maintain their independence through diplomacy. Ashoka was not his father's designated heir, but his brother Shushim antagonized the ministers, and Ashoka managed to take power. It is said that he killed his brothers, although this may be a fabrication from later texts. Ashoka converted to Buddhism after he conquered the kingdom of Kalinga, and the stories would have it to be carnage of the battles involved were too much even for his hardened heart to bear. Ashoka had created a tormenting chamber known as the Ashoka's Hell, which appeared to be outside as a beautiful palace, and a Buddhist monk named Samudra was captured in the palace, but his inner peace left him immune to to the tormenting, and his miracles convinced Ashoka to convert. The man of war became a man of peace, and the Maurya Empire at its height was the greatest power in the world, yet it was in the end too large to sustain itself. Without a powerful leader, the separation identities of the kingdom had welded together soon resorted themselves to be independent, and the great empire faded away. One lost city that you may have heard of or watched countless adaptations of is to this day is the city of Troy, located in present-day Turkey. Troy was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt during its 4,000 years of occupation. As a result, the site is divided into 9 archaeological layers, each corresponding to a building built on the ruins of the previous. Troy was first settled around 3600 BC and grew into a small fortified city around 3000 BC. Being destroyed and built up again signifies its impact of the civilization of the people who lived there, and as a result, multiple excavations were made to find its remains. Due to its popularity over time, even mentioned in Greek philosophers like the Iliad, sets Troy in its final era of the Trojan War, where the legends go and recount a brief but crucial period of the Trojan War, a conflict between the city of Troy and its allies against the confederations of Greek cities, collectively known as the Achaeans, I think. The major themes of Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, are revenge, war and mortality, love and friendship, fate versus free will, and honor. The theme of revenge drives the plot from the beginning of the poem through the end, and the Iliad is set during the Trojan War, but the conflict in this story isn't between the Achaeans and the Trojans, but between the Agamemnon and the leader of the Greek army, Achilles, the army's finest warrior. The entire war, or the entire fight, was caused by their stubbornness and pride, and Troy now exists as the present-day Hiroselik in Turkey and can be visited via tourist spot, but of course, like all civilization relics behave. There is more concrete evidence of the Celtic Druids engaging in animal sacrifices, but the archaeological findings, such as animal bones and ritualistic context, suggest that the Celtic people conducted ceremonies involving the sacrificing of animals. However, Julius Caesar, in his writings on the Gallic Wars, mentioned the Druids were the religious elite among the Celts, and they had great influence in the matter of both religions and governance. He suggests that the Druids performed human sacrifices, particularly in times of crisis, inside large wicker effigies or cages. Other classical writers, such as Greek historian Strabo and the Roman poet Lucian, also made reference to the Druidic practices. However, they suggested the human sacrifices as pretty prevalent at the time. But these accounts are often second-handed and influences of the biases as well, and especially when it comes to the interest of occupying more land, nations would do and say anything to justify their wars to steal land from indigenous people. I'm looking at you. Speaking of behaving, I don't think the civilization behaved very well, and when it came to human life, let's see as we go along. Well, the notion of human sacrifice, as I mentioned, is also prevalent in the Phoenicians, is intriguing, and has been the subject of historical inquiry. It remains an area where evidence is not entirely conclusive, as classical authors, including ancient Greeks, of course, and Roman writers, occasionally mention the practice of child sacrifices among Phoenicians. Though the most commonly cited source is the Greek historians Herodotus, whoever wrote the sacrifices part and the during times of crisis. However, it's crucial to approach these accounts very critically, as they are often based on secondhand information and cultural biases. So they had issues with each other anyway, so they'll make up anything to justify crap, right? Sorry. Archaeological excavations have uncovered evidence of the child burials in certain Phoenician contexts. However, researchers interpreted these findings as possible just instances of human sacrifices, while argue just explained as just burial customs and people are just dumb. Or natural causes should be considered. The Akkadian Empire is a fun one, as its existence was prevalent over 4,000 years, and this empire originated as a simple city. And for millennia, all that remained of this great empire was a single word, a throwaway reference of the book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 10. The word of Akkad was thanks to Henry Rawlinson in the 19th century, as he deciphered a few texts from the cuneiform script, and lo and behold, there she was. The ancient world was opened up, and the Akkad was unknown no more. No longer unknown, but not found. We still don't know where it is, actually, though scholars believe it was somewhere near the modern city of Baghdad. What we know, however, from the Akkad was a great empire, as the Akkadian Empire, covering much of the land that would become Persia and later the modern Middle East. The fall of the Akkadian Empire is one, as might expected, somewhat unclear, as legends speak of a curse laying on the land as Naram Sin for sacking the Akra temple in the city of Nippur, or the holiest temple of the god Enlil. This may be some of the foundations, in fact, for the curse speaks of drought and famine on the land, as it was backed up by archaeological evidence. Political conflicts between settled farmers and nomadic herders also destabilized the country, as did the raids of the Gutian people, the first case of barbarianism from the north raiding an empire, but far from the last. Regardless of the cause, however, the Akkadian Empire had fallen. Teotihuacan is an amazing ancient city city that runs 30 miles from Mexico City, although the original name is lost in time. The city was discovered by the Aztecs, roughly estimated the city's foundation was in around 100 BC, and it grew to be the largest city that would ever exist until the American War of Independence. The name used by the Aztecs is what the city is known now as Teotihuacan, as it's also known as the birthplace of the gods, for surely they thought only the gods could have built an amazing city such as this. And who was it that actually built Teotihuacan? It remains a mystery to us, as much of those of the 14th century Aztecs. Originally, it was thought to have been built by the Toltecs, a predecessor of the Aztec civilization, but the dates we know now kind of make it impossible. At least 5 distinct cultures shared what is modern-day Mexico back then, and all of them has districts that of the great city, especially notes of the Mayans and the Nuha, who would later give rise to the Aztecs, but other smaller groups such as the Zapotec and the Atomi were also present. This unusual ethnic mix may have been the result of natural disaster, of some geological evidence points to a volcanic eruption, or a force of all displacement of the people of the original homeland and to move to the city. This tolerance may have come from their unique culture, as investigations of the city have found that multiple gods are worshipped there, while sacrifices, including human sacrifices, were not unknown. It does not appear that has been practiced to anywhere near the same extent as later cultures more familiar to us. Sadly though, the local government, this is recent news, placed an improvement of a Walmart to be made on the side edge of the site, despite it being a world designated historical site. Only in recent years has the scale of the corruption enabled all of this to come to light, and it paints a chilling picture for the future of this amazing birthplace of the gods. This city has stood for over 1300 years since it's mysteriously abandoned, and it would be such a sad thing indeed if it finally sacrificed on the altar of cutthroat capitalism. The Turkish Empire is one of well-known empires on the planet, but then again, saying Turkish Empire might provoke some things for some people. Some may think of the Ottoman Empire, the destroyers of the Byzantine who lasted through the centuries, or even the military reforms in the Balkan Wars. But when it came to Turkic Khaganate, it would be the 7th largest country in the world today, and not so much shy of those larger. The Khaganate began, as some dynasties do, with an unbearable insult. Bumin of the Ashina clan was a general of the armies of the Ajuran Khaganate. However, he had ruled the area, or they have ruled the area of modern Mongolia for about 200 years when some tribes revolted. The Khaganate expanded rapidly till it ruled over parts of Asia. During the 580s, the Turkic Khaganate faced a crisis that ended up causing a civil war and broke up the empire. As mentioned before, the Khaganate was ruling the Ashina clan, but the ruler was known as the Khagan. But despite all the conflicts and the connections of one clan or land to another was essential to the 5th to 8th century, as the Silk Road trades opened up opportunities for connectivity, which as we know is very impactful for all of history. And speaking of history, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. My name is Jess and I wish you all the best. Bye.